let's get going, and hopefully, as people join, they'll only miss my wonderful introduction. But firstly, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. This is our 17th webinar in this series, exploring how tax technology can help you. The usual housekeeping points. Today's session will be recorded. Please do ask your questions through the Q&A option in the Zoom, and we'll answer those at the end. Today's session will offer a follow-up. So for those that want a deeper dive into what we're talking about, more than happy to do that. An invite will follow. And as always, we will keep it to 30 minutes. So let's get into it. My name is Ian Bowden. I'm a tax partner and I'm head of BDO's Tax Automation and Innovation Practice. This series explores the art of the possible. All our previous events are now on our website and via our YouTube channel. I sound like a YouTuber here, but be sure to like and subscribe and be kept up to date when new topics are released. In this series, we do like to bring you insights into hot topics and try to showcase different vendors. And luckily, we're doing both of those today. I'm really excited to be joined by Ben and Antonia from Fonoa, and really do appreciate them both joining us this morning. Just by way of context, the Chancellor is expected to have a rather busy day today, and some may have missed one or two of her recent announcements where she started to outline a package of reforms on how we're going to improve the UK's tax system and try and help fix the foundations of the UK economy. As part of that package, they are launching a consultation into electronic invoicing, e-invoicing, and its wider promotion across the UK and businesses. So that's the main topic of our discussions today. And just before we hand over to the Fonoa team, as always with these sessions, we do like to provide that quick market overview on today's topic. And who better? Delighted to be joined by VAT partner Chris Rowe, who's going to give us a quick snapshot into the world of e-invoicing and what we can look forward to and what we've learned thus far. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Ian. Here's the next slide, Jordan. Right, so e-invoicing then. So there's definitely an e-invoicing revolution in full swing, I would say. So first of all, then, what is e-invoicing? Well, what it isn't is it's not a PDF sent by email. Because whilst that might seem digital, it's certainly better than a paper invoice. It still requires manual entry or OCR to actually extract the information from the invoice. So what e-invoicing actually is it's a digital document containing structured data or code, and it's sent via secure data exchange. So it'll be created in the supplier's ERP or e-invoicing platform and then sent digitally to the customer, who should receive it directly into their ERP or e-invoicing platform. So it's digital throughout. In terms of why do this? Well, governments are obviously always looking at keeping pace with the digital age. So that's a big requirement. And also a key thing is because it's so secure, it really does reduce tax evasion essentially and fraud. So e-invoicing is not new. It's been in place in places like Mexico and Latin America for many years. I think the first was Chile in 2001. So as Ian says, in the UK, we might finally catch up in maybe 20, probably I was going to say 25, but maybe more like 30 years later, potentially. That shows you where we are in the UK. So that's the invoicing. It sounds good in principle. There's a few challenges, especially for you guys and your businesses. So across the globe, there isn't just one standard format. There's multiple network. So there's lots of different variations to deal with, as with everything in life. So region to region, country to country, there's different requirements and different formats that are needed. The other big challenge is, whilst tax is obviously key to this, first and foremost, it's a business process, not a tax process. So it requires a lot of organizational change. You're going to need IT, finance, procurement, etc. on board, even sales, to be honest. So it's kind of like throughout the business needs to get on board with it. And then, is it a cost or a saving? Well, clearly there's a cost to getting this set up. But actually, a number of large organizations have been voluntarily doing this for many years due to the savings in terms of the AP and AR time and cost. So there is definitely a positive aspect to it. Clearly, though, as governments are mandating this more and more, it's not really voluntary anymore. So going to be increasingly prevalent. And if we go to the next slide, so looking a little bit closer to home, so in terms of Europe, so that picture on the slide is from the BDO Global website, where we've got quite a handy e-invoicing tracker. So it's probably worth checking that out. But what's driving the change in Europe is VAT in a digital age, also known as VIDA. And this is across the EU. Again, a series of reform as we look to keep pace with a digital age. And by 2030, it's going to be mandated that e-invoicing is going to be used for cross-border intercommunity supplies, again, to combat fraud, because the VAT gap in the EU is significant. So that's what's coming in Europe. And as Ian mentioned, potentially very close to home in the UK, we might have e-invoicing in the years to come. We're expecting the consultation to be released early in 2025. And we'll see if Rector Reeves makes any comment on it today as well. So in terms of countries that are live, you've got the likes of Italy, Romania, and Greece. And then coming in 2025 and 2026 on the slide, we've got some further territories there. So 2025, Latvia, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and 26, France, Belgium, Slovakia, Poland, Croatia. So if you've got operations across Europe, you might already be impacted, or you might be becoming impacted, or you might find that you've got a lot more territories to manage. So, and that's the key question really. So the strategy piece to this is, first of all, impact assessment. So where am I going to be impacted in the coming years, and then how do I deal with that? Is there a solution directly within the ERP? Is it an e-invoicing platform? Do we want to look at one provider per country, which probably give you a lot to manage, or do we want to look at it on a regional basis? So that's kind of what we're helping clients with. And without further ado, we'll hand you over to Ben and Antonio to look at the Fonoa E-invoicing platform. So over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us on. Let me just jump over to the screen here so we can share. Great. So good morning, everyone. My name's Ben Lewis. I'm a senior tax manager in our e-invoicing team here at Fonoa. And I know most of you are keen to jump straight into a product demo, but I'm going to keep you in suspense for just a few more minutes. And that's because some of you might actually be wondering who we are and what we do. So maybe let me start with that and set the Fonoa scene and introduce then our e-invoicing solution before I hand you over to the capable hands of Antonio. So it might seem like an obvious statement to start, but I guess just touching on some of the stuff Chris has just mentioned, but the future of tax is digital. You know, tax authorities globally are changing the way they operate by introducing these rules and regulations that require you to report a lot more data, report electronically in a structured way, and with a trend towards reporting that data in real time. And that's important because it's really the biggest change ever for in-house tax and finance functions and how they operate. And these functions are becoming more and more about data, process, technology than ever before. And that means moving to an environment of what we call continuous compliance. So what does that mean, and what's the impact? I think if we were to distill it into one word, it would probably be compression. We're moving away from having that safety net of being able to manually impact compliance. You know, looking to the future, that manual human intervention starts to fall away, and both transaction processing and reporting is happening in real time. So that periodic view you currently have today is slowly starting to erode. And to deal with that compression and complexity, essentially what we have done at Fonoa is try to build a product suite, or have built a product suite to cover it, and to cover that the critical indirect tax touch points across that record to report flow. So Fonoa is a global tax automation platform that allows you to do all of these things, like validate tax IDs, calculate taxes, generate invoices and e-invoices, report transactions, and obviously file your tax returns through that single solution. And you'll see here e-invoicing at the center of this platform. But just to clarify, the e-invoicing solution we have obviously houses e-invoicing, but also houses a few other things. So just general tax invoicing where there's not an e-invoicing mandate. It also covers fiscalization requirements and also digital reporting, such as the likes of SII in Spain. So let's jump in to talk about and just introduce the invoicing solution a little bit. This is generally how we see the process, split between implementation and maintenance. And for some of you who maybe have been through these implementations in the past, we know it can be painful, it can be complex, and it's obviously ongoing and evolving. These requirements have a significant impact on businesses. You need to understand what you have to do. You need to understand and gather the right data for each transaction, jurisdiction, and stakeholder. You need to send different data to different tax authorities in the right timelines. You need to make sure the data has been effectively reported without any issues. You need to store that data for a specific time period and in the right location and format. And of course, the rules of this game are constantly changing globally and in every country. And so our focus here for Fonoa is to kind of cut through that noise and complexity. And what we're doing is delivering a seamless automated e-invoicing solution that ensures businesses like yours can meet complex, evolving tax and e-invoicing regulations without adding that significant workload. For example, we know from multiple surveys and events we've been at that data is often the biggest issue for many businesses, and that often limits the ability to be compliant. And what we try to do for our solution is deal with that for you. So, from a compliance standpoint, we'll show you the data you need to be compliant. We gather that data in a single place to an API. We enrich, validate, and complete that data, and we try to ease any troubleshooting through our dashboard. We also know that tax and finance team resources are generally constant, while the number of these mandates are going up and increasing and evolving. So we try to keep our implementation timelines tight. The average timeline for implementation we have is around 2 months, which compares to 6 to 18 months if you look at some of the market reports. So I've talked there a little bit about the solution and introduced the product a little bit. What you're going to do now is hand over to Antonio, who's going to essentially show you how it works in practice. So over to you, Antonio.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. Let me just steal your screen for a moment. There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Antonio. I'm an engineering manager for Fonoa's e-invoicing product. I'm not a tax professional, but I've been building and working or in and around e-invoicing for the past 4 years. So I learned a thing or two along the way. I'm going to show you what our platform looks like. I'm going to walk you through our UI and the dashboard, but I want you to keep in mind that everything that you see here today is also accessible automatically through API connections between your ERPs, between your billing systems and other platforms that you might use, so that we can automate everything and make sure that your workflows are happening in real time. So I'll dive straight into our e-invoicing product section. And what you can see when you open it immediately is kind of like a high-level overview, a health check of your e-invoicing system. You can see stuff like total revenue that you collected along different jurisdictions. You can see different type of taxes that you collected in different countries and different currencies. Then one of the most important things, of course, reporting rate for you operational folks who are interested in keeping it as high as possible, and then any possible errors that happened with your data. This is basically to say that we give you a dashboard so that you can, at a glance, understand what the status is, if you're perhaps need to jump in and see where the problems are, or perhaps we can proactively notify you in case your, for example, credentials have expired in some of the jurisdictions, or there's an upcoming mandate that you need to fulfill given your registrations. I won't go into all of the details and capabilities in this demo, given the time constraint, but I'd love to show you more if you're interested later. But for now, this is traditionally something that your head of taxes or head of finances would be interested in, and they could see it. Then moving on,
Antonio, sorry to interrupt. We assume there's a couple of people are not seeing the new screens at the moment. Would you do me a favor and just, Chris, can you, unshare or whatever? And Antonio, do you mind just stop sharing and then resharing and see if that refreshes the people? Sorry.
Perfect. No worries.
Chris, you want to stop sharing, or Jordan, do you want to stop sharing?
All
And
right.
then do you want to try that again, Antonio? Hopefully that's fixed up for everybody. Sorry about that.
Okay. Can you see it now? Can I get a thumbs up?
Yeah, I've got you.
Okay, perfect. So moving on. I've shown you what the high-level dashboard looks like, so you can get your reports and get your all of the data at the palm of your hand. But then let's go back a little bit. You know, how do we even get started, right? We talked about many different countries having many different regulations in different jurisdictions. You might be tackling different formats. You might be talking to partners and providers in different countries. So it all adds on to this complexity. So we like to take it from the very beginning, right? We need to understand what you're in scope for, what kind of obligations you have in a given jurisdiction, and then we go into data gathering phase. And this is where Fonoa master data comes in handy. You can see all of the fields that we collect based on with different countries that we support. And you can see, okay, this is the list of all of them. But if we go ahead and filter them, for example, with Portugal, one of my favorite examples, you can see that we roughly take 3 types of data. Supplier data, in this case, your company, the company that's doing a sale, transaction data, all of the information about line items, about taxes, about amounts, etc. And then finally, there's also customer data that you might send along with the transaction. And one of the things that we like to point out is the small number at the bottom of my screen saying 39. It basically says that you need 39 data points in order to successfully report a transaction with Portuguese tax authorities. Now, this is very important because this is one of the key features of our product. We standardize the data set, meaning that no matter where you report and no matter what kind of obligations you have, you're always going to be working with the same data set. And this, we've seen that this helps our clients prepare for data gathering, and it helps them go live faster the more countries they implement with Fonoa. So the timeframes that Ben mentioned with 2 months end up being perhaps 30, we've seen 35 days for countries recently, which is a really big success. Then there's an integration guide, which is basically hand-holding you throughout the entire process, explaining all of the different things that you need to do in order to start using Fonoa as your e-invoicing provider. Again, Portuguese example, it tells you exactly what needs to happen. You need to choose and select Fonoa as your certified provider. Give us the credentials that are needed to report on your behalf, and then we go into specific details. For example, credit notes, debit notes, then a bit, SAFTI export, all of the specialties and peculiarities of that given jurisdiction. Then finally, there are a couple of more technical bits here. All of this is available in our API documentation. This is something you would give to your technical team. Once you understand what you're in scope for, you understand what data you need, you would basically give this as some form of a specification to your IT team so that they can make a connection. And then what are the key features again is we understand that our clients usually need to comply with many different rules in many different countries. You might have 30 different jurisdictions that you need to cover, and managing 30 different partners or even a handful of partners can be a headache, especially when there's super big differences between these countries. So one of the key features as well for us is that we create a catalog of all of the errors that we observed in all of the jurisdictions where we are live, and we give you an explanation that's localized in English and also recommended action of what you can do in order to fix it. So documentation, just to get you up and running as fast as possible. Of course, there's also our support and solutioning team that's there in case you have any questions. Once you understand all of this, you have your integration guides, you have your data sorted out, you understand how to connect. We configure companies for you, which is basically your reporting entity. For example, basic data, company numbers, tax numbers, addresses, etc., everything that a tax authority might require. And of course, any credentials or certificates that you need in order to authenticate with the tax authorities, we take care of all of that, securely store it, and once it's configured, it's ready to be used. It's ready to be used for e-invoicing. I'm going to show you an example of our e-invoicing solution I'm going to open a CSV here that I prepared beforehand. This is an example for Romania. This is a B2B transactions, a couple of them actually, but a couple of line items. And as you can see, well, this is maybe 15, 20 data points. Keep that in mind, it's going to be important later. So I'm just drag and drop it here using our standard CSV formats. I click import, and then it appears right here. It says that the status is imported. If I click here, you'll see that it's in progress. If we give it a couple of more seconds, there we go, succeeded. Now you can download your invoices knowing that it's all reported, it's looking fine. Let's see it here. There we go. This is what you reported to the tax authorities. This is a PDF, like a human readable version of what you just reported. But if you go into our transactions page, you can also see all of the transactions that we just imported, and you can see like the entire historical overview. You can drill down into transactions. You can filter them. You can export them, import them, whatever you'd like. So let's just take one of these examples from Romania. Let's drill into it. This is the PDF I just showed a couple of minutes ago. Or seconds ago. We explained exactly what happened. We reported the transaction successfully to the tax authorities, and it's kind of like a workflow, right? We report it, and then the document is generated, and we give you back the result. If we go into, you've seen the CSV, it has 15-ish, 20 maybe data points, but this is what we sent to the tax authorities. Right, this is a pretty huge file. This is a technical format. Structured data, right? There's a lot of data points here. And that's the beauty of Fonoa standard format. We actually only ask for data that's absolutely needed in order to make this transaction go through the tax authorities. We don't want to ask for data that can be configured or inferred or determined. Of course, we do all of this during the onboarding phase where we make sure that what Fonoa produces is correct. But this allows us to have a pretty standard and tight format across all of the jurisdictions, meaning that the differences for you are minimal. If I go into another example, for example, Portugal, again, same drill, but this time around, the XML looks completely different. But under the hood, it's all the same data for us. That's the beauty. Finally, we also support exports in different formats. I mentioned SAFT, but you can also take all of this data and store it or reconcile it with your system. If there are, maybe specific requirements for a given tax jurisdiction, such as storing the data at a local soil, archiving the data for a long time, 5, 10, 15 years, or any other, for example, digital signature or any other requirement, Fonoa handles all of that out of the box. All you need to do is prepare the data that you gathered in a standard Fonoa format, and then start sending it with us. And we configure the workflows for you so that you always do the right thing with the right piece of transactional data. So this was really quick. I think I covered most of it. Ben, over to you. Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so. Really good, Antonio. And I think the video team will be happy because it's been kept to time.
Yeah. No, thanks.
Isn't that the dream, Ben? But thank you both. That was fantastic. Thank you, Chris.
Cheers, Ian. Yeah, so cheers, guys. That's really, really useful. So I suppose, as mentioned, we're having lots of discussions with clients in terms of helping them to pick the best solution for them, and then implementing it as well. So I suppose maybe a slightly unfair but a killer question: what sets you guys' platform apart from others? And someone's also asked that actually on the Q&A.
Ben, you want me to take it? Or I can give my perspective.
Yeah, give your perspective, and I can always add to it. Yeah.
So one of the key features of our product is that we create a standard model, meaning that once you go live with us in a single country, the next country is going to be relatively simple. It's going to be trivial because the overlap of the data that you require is going to be roughly 70 to 85%, depending on the country jurisdiction, because our enrichments and validations ensure that no matter what shape your data is in and what kind of health of your data is, we're going to make the best use of it. Right, that's one of the key standout features, and that's why these times to go live with Fonoa are market leading, basically. Ben, what about your perspective?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I'm a fairly recent joiner to Fonoa, but I've been in consulting, I've been in house, and I think that the timeline to implement is really important. I've experienced much longer lead times and in other when I was working in house. So it's interesting that first the average is 2 months, then it gets down to more quick, as you've just said, right? Because we've already got a lot of the data that's already in place. I think the other thing as well is a real focus on compliance, right? A lot of the data that we ask for is just so you can be compliant. We don't ask for absolutely everything and in one go. And it's also the validations of that data. So, other providers will validate, but they'll simply pass through the data and then expect the tax authority to fail. What we try to do is validate, enrich before you get to that point. So you're not sending transactions that are just going to fail. So we try and do that up front.
Got a couple of questions that have come through. Do you mind if I just shout them out and just run through
Go
them? Is this B2B or can it be configured B2C?
Both.
Both, yeah.
Perfect. Capacity of Fonoa for holding data. A number of the companies that have listed have got huge volumes of transactions in the fiscal year. Anything that customers should be aware of? You've talked about that curation piece and only pulling data that you need. Does that help from a data volumes perspective?
No worries there whatsoever. We work with modern big tech companies that have huge volumes. We're talking hundreds of millions of transactions. Not a problem at all.
And these two are kind of linked, and it was back to my kind of killer question, which was going to be around what's next for you guys and Fonoa and where you're going. The specific questions: are you going to be picking up countries outside of Europe? Malaysia's been picked, and then what's the plan to cover Czech Republic and the UK?
So Malaysia is actually in progress right now, Antonio, isn't it? So that's going live in Q4 for a couple of our clients. The coverage, I think if we're being bold, the goal over the next 2 years is to have global coverage. So we're not a European only based vendor at all. In fact, a lot of the mandates we typically see are in Latin America and outside of Europe. Italy being the main one from an e-invoicing point of view. In Europe, but again, a lot of the fiscalization requirements in Eastern Europe, Portugal, we've got fiscalization requirements as well. So it's that kind of coverage that we can offer in the same solution. But global coverage is the goal over the next 2 years. So irrespective of what countries we cover today, it really is that goal over the next 2 years. So quite bold, but definitely doable.
And in terms of the future plans, API integrations and being able to pull data from client systems has got to be high up on your roadmap. What ERP systems are currently supported at the moment?
We have some support with NetSuite. Again, our traditional clients would have their own in-house systems where we would build direct API integrations, but we're also looking into other ERP connectors. It's an open conversation and a partnership. If it's Oracle, it's Oracle. If it's something else, of course, we can look into it. As long as we can get the data into our system, we're golden.
So standard API connections at the moment, there's something that gets built per client rather than you having a pre-built package is what we're going with that, Antonio, on that
exactly.
one. Couple more quick ones. I think we've already picked up some of this. Standard input for all of Europe, do it once and do it all. You've kind of alluded to it's almost there. It's 70-80% per country. Is that where the number you were giving, Antonio?
Exactly. So some countries might ask you for a little bit more data, then that's the 5 to 10% that we are accounting for, but everything else is basically the same.
I guess we've got another one around, not just the submission to the revenue authorities, but the integration with your suppliers as well. Do all your customers need to be fully integrated with you to receive e-invoices? Do you provide some invoice received type functionality?
We have some clients where the integration looks a little bit different, where we're pulling data from their systems. We're always open to those kinds of conversations. This is just to get the conversation started. Standard API. From there, you can build basically anything you can imagine.
Fantastic. Look, one last one. We'll sneak one last question in, and then we'll wrap it up. How does this affect if you have AP invoicing solution within the system?
So it depends on the mandate. It depends on the mandate, right? Some countries you're trying to pull invoices directly from tax authority portals. Some countries will have validation by tax authorities, but the invoice needs to be sent by the supplier to the customer. So you need a solution to be able to pick that up. So it's quite a hard question to answer with specifics, but it would depend on the mandate and depend on how the solution operates. We would try to obviously fit into your environment as best as possible.
Okay. Conscious of time, we've hit our time. Really appreciate you both. If any other questions do come in, please do let us have them. We'll get back to you with those answers. There'll be a follow-up session and you can have a bit more time with Ben and Antonia to go through the solution in a bit more detail. Appreciate it's been incredibly quick today, but thank you all very much for joining. Thank you, Ben, Antonia, and as always, Chris, for joining us and taking us through this, and look forward to seeing you at our next one. And thanks again. Have a good